Hi everyone, and welcome back to this thing that I'm doing. I wanted to say thank you so much for watching my last video. Today I want to talk about Erin Mendenhall. Erin Mendenhall is our sweet, well-meaning, terrible communicator mayor of Salt Lake City, Utah. Where the hell have you been? It seems like she's been missing in action this whole time. Or has she? So going along with what I'm trying to do with this series, I want to talk about what she has to do with the protests. So I know that she's done a lot of other things, but this seems like the most important thing right now. People aren't in the streets protesting for no reason. So this, again, needs the spotlight. So again, like I did in my last video, I want to clarify what a mayor actually does and what kind of power she has. Like we learned last week, Sim Gill is the district attorney for Salt Lake County, Utah, and he chooses whether to press criminal charges on people who have been arrested. Mayors, on the other hand, lead city council, which consists of 7 members. She is more of a figurehead, a publicity person, and someone with a whole lot of power. You can kind of think of the mayor as the CEO of a city. She oversees financial decisions, city planning, and is kind of the spokesperson for public relations. She has very little governmental control, but she is able to sign in executive orders when she wishes. She also oversees the police department and the fire department. So it sounds like she has a lot of power, but her decisions are largely left to the whim of the city council. But basically, the biggest thing to remember right now is that she oversees the SLC PD. So remember that. So Erin Mendenhall's background is in environmental concerns like air quality and protection of Utah's environment. She was part of Utah Moms for Clean Air and worked to bring air quality concerns to state legislature and add it into the curriculum in Utah schools. She served as chair of the Utah's Air Quality Board and then eventually moved into politics, becoming a city councilwoman in 2013. So then Erin Mendenhall was elected to be Salt Lake City mayor last fall and took office just this past January 2020. So she brought her concerns and background in environmental policy to the mayor's office, but has since been struck with a ton of issues that are totally not her jam. First COVID and now protests, she has not had an easy first 8 months in office. So Erin, being a progressive mayor, we look to her as sort of an opportunity to bring real change to our city, but she hasn't quite lived up to the expectations. And again, this could be due to the fact that she's relatively new, but still, you're the mayor. And right now, concerning police brutality, we need like an antithesis to Sim Gill. But she's been missing in action. Or so we thought. So it is important to remember that Sim Gill and Erin Mendenhall have virtually no overlapping duties. The only thing Erin could have done to go head-to-head with Sim Gill was to work on police brutality before Bernardo Palacios was killed. And she took office in January though, so we have to give her slack that she was not aware of what a total dumpster fire at the SLC PD is. Also, side note, some SLC protesters are facing life in prison for allegedly buying red paint to paint a street. And thanks, Sim Gill. Yes, the answer to your question is that is all Sim Gill. He decides whether to press charges. He is forcing life sentences. And just so you know, the max amount of time someone is in prison for forcible sexual abuse in Salt Lake County is no more than 15 years. So what kind of statement is Gill making? Like, really, Sim Gill, try harder. Mayor Mendenhall has a seriously bad rep for a lot of reasons, but she has been doing some work that has pretty terrible publicity, while she's being looked at for things outside of her power. I mean, it would be nice and effective if our government leaders could be more transparent about the work they're doing or not doing, but we really don't have the pinnacle of great communication in the Oval Office right now. So here is Mayor Erin Mendenhall's track of action alongside the progression of protests going on in Salt Lake. Okay, so backing up. On Saturday, May 30th, there was a national day of protest and thousands gathered downtown, including myself. As we all know by now, this was sparked by the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, but it was really the boiling over of oppression of black folks and really non-white people everywhere in the U.S. But really, it was the boiling over of oppression of black folks and really non-white people in general in the U.S. since the U.S. And also in SLC, our anger over the murder of Bernardo Palacios, which happened just a week before, and was in the midst of being swept off Simgill's desk like it was nothing. Hundreds and hundreds of protesters were up at the Capitol listening to speakers and singing and dancing and having serious discussions. And yet ABC4 News, CBS2 News, KSL5 News were all missing in action, and rather following a small group of protesters down by the city library. By the time we moved from the Capitol to start marching back down to the city and county building and the public safety building, local news was already reporting a riot breaking out downtown. This is the problem with our local news stations. There were no cameras when there were speakers, chants, music. Bernardo Palacio's mother spoke, and we prayed for him. Where was the press? Villainizing the protesters. So, back down in the city, windows were smashed, things were tagged ACAB and Fuck 1-2, and then, of course, the infamous unattended cop car flipped over and set on fire. And not to try to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there is no parking on 4th South, and yet there was a cop car just parked there, unattended, like, that's sus. And this is truly where Erin Mendenhall's rep started going down the drain. It seemed like she wasn't listening to us at all. So she oversees the SLC PD and called for the National Guard to come in and break up the crowd. She then put in place a curfew trying to get all protesters to go home. And things get so messy here. So her calling in riot police and enforcing a curfew felt like a silencing technique. Is she listening at all? Especially since all news media was showing just a riot downtown. And these on-camera reporters hid behind the police line rather than, I don't know, being real journalists and understanding what's going on the other side. So the problem here is that everyone at home was watching what the local news was reporting on TV, which breeds all of its own problems. So Mayor Erin Mendenhall called a curfew, and most protesters dispersed, but some didn't and were arrested. And then Erin decided to place a week-long curfew to keep protesters from doing what they're gonna do. Protesting. As a progressive mayor, I was personally really shocked to see how she handled this. It felt like she was hiding behind her own line of National Guard and putting protesters in timeout. She made us feel like children, and by her putting in place a curfew, she ignored how the protest was largely peaceful and pacifying the residents who were calling for these protests to end. Look, and we've seen this action being taken place all over the country, stemming from Trump, who would rather gas all protesters and cut out our tongues and grant people their basic human rights. Okay, and I literally hate when people say I'm playing devil's advocate, but I kind of wonder why she wasn't paying attention to what the protest was really about, and why there was no news of what was happening at the Capitol while all of this was going on. Like, she wasn't at the protests, and it makes me wonder where she's getting her information. Like, are all the people that work for her the ones showing her the male reporter on KSL hiding behind the police line, and she saw that as a representation of the whole protest? And the only way to stop destruction of a city is to use force, but once force is used, you lose all respect. Like, did she know it was going to turn out this way? So after she put the curfew in place Saturday night, the protesters continued to show up. And it was like she was giving us a reward for good behavior, and she lifted the curfew early. And this is her tweet. Felt like she wasn't listening at all, but then she issued this statement. I implore them to stay engaged. You don't have to convince us that we have broken systems. We know we do. We want to do this work. And again, them is the wrong choice of word. Like, someone needs to vet her statements before she makes them. Like, I truly think she has good intentions, but Jesus, Erin, communicate that you are on our side. Like, words matter. You as a mayor should understand that. And using her mayoral powers over public spaces, Erin then called for artists to help design a Black Lives Matter mural to go right outside the city and county building. Like, I felt like this was a little bit pandering because she had yet to be really vocal and communicative about what she was really doing. Anyone can commission a mural, but she's the mayor. She has powers over laws and departments, which is where the real change needs to happen. So then she issued this statement about the mural. We are taking this symbolic step as a city to boldly acknowledge this movement and commit to our role in it. An important part of this for us is creating a space where artists and community members are able to come together to express their feelings on this movement. So I was pretty annoyed about this, but the mural was finished just this past week and it looks so beautiful. So then Lex Scott, who's the founder of Black Lives Matter Utah, said in a news release about the mural, "This mural is a symbol of how this country is changing and coming to understand the movement. We have been in these streets working toward justice and equality for 6 years. Now we get a visual representation of our work and goals to truly achieve justice in this country. Like, Erin, please get better press, because she actually has been doing stuff. And here's what she's been doing behind the scenes. In response to Sim Gill's bullshit ruling, Erin did what she could, and she founded the Salt Lake City Racial Equality and Policing Commission. In a message to the Palacios Carbajal family, she said that she hopes that you may one day find solace in our actions and efforts to ensure that no family should ever find themselves in the position you are in now. It's really frustrating to think about that in retrospect, because our laws have been so backwards at protecting cops and like villainizing regular citizens. And it's frustrating because it's hard to realize that the people that are in power don't use their power effectively. Or in retrospect, they should have done this, should have done that. And Erin is like a really big part of that. It is nice to know that she is really working hard, but again, her efforts aren't really in the forefront of our brains. Sim Gill is the one to blame for the fact that no officers are being charged. The mayor is the one to blame for the fact that the laws Sim Gill cited to keep these officers out of prison are there in the first place. And because Erin didn't take office until January, truly this dumpster fire was because of our previous mayor, Jackie Biskupski, I don't know, who in my opinion is a dumpster fire herself. So this commission is really, really new, and it's still filling its board with a hopefully diverse panel of community members and leaders. I really have a lot of hope for this moving forward. I mean, poor Erin Mendenhall, she took office in January trying to better the environment and give Rose Park free Wi-Fi, and yet she inherited an international pandemic and we're on the brink of a civil war. So by July 24th, we learned that although the commission hadn't been fully formed yet, Erin Mendenhall was already working on a lot of reforms to put in place for the SLCPD moving forward. Number 1 is intervention, which is police stopping each other. 2, searches, which is more transparent need for warrants. 3, body cameras, punishment if officers turn them off. 4, no-knock warrants are unacceptable. And 5, de-escalation, which is try everything before violence. Finally, using her mayoral powers, on August 3rd, she issued an executive order concerning these 5 areas of reform, starting to implement their use in the SLCPD. So I've read the policies and they are pretty vague, but I'm hoping within the next couple weeks they will start to be cleared up and we can start to see how the mayor is planning on reforming the SLCPD. So it is good to know that something is happening and that there is movement. A lot of anger is directed at our mayor, and I do think a lot of it is justified. But Erin Mendenhall only took office in January. She inherited a lot of mess. The mayor's office is definitely to blame, but this reaches back to Biskupski and earlier. All I'm saying is, Mayor Mendenhall, you have a pretty terrible PR team. Like, we aren't aware of what's happening behind the scenes. Everything is so horribly publicized. You are hurting your chances at re-election by not communicating with the public. Like, tell us what you're up to. Tell us what you're going to do. Don't make us go waiting around for months until you finally tell us that you've been working on something the whole time. Like, this is the problem with people in power. So many things happen behind closed doors. No wonder there's so much anger. Erin Mendenhall needs better PR. Like, girl, you need an Olivia Pope.